What we're going to do in this video is show you how to add a new inventory item manually. Now, Lizzy by default is keeping all of the accounting stuff over in the contact section when the different vendors are set up in the system. So we're going to skip the accounting side of it and strictly look at how do I add a new item. And one of the nice things about Lizzy is that once the vendor records are set up, there's nothing really to do as far as adding inventory with respect to accounting. Lizzy knows how to deal with all of it itself automatically. So we're going to go to inventory. We're going to tell it to add a new item. And then we're going to select the manufacturer. And selecting the manufacturer, this is a list of all the contact records that have been set up in the contact section for or tagged specifically as a manufacturer. And again, the accounting stuff is being determined just by selecting them. So for this one, I'm just going to tell it it's a Briggs & Stratton item. If there's any excise tax information for that item, it's added here. We have accounting categories, and accounting categories are different than just categories that we're adding to the parts section. The accounting categories are used by Lizzy to determine how it's going to hit accounts or how certain reports are going to look at this particular item, and there can only be one accounting category per part that's in the system. The categories, the primary and secondary categories that you can assign to the part, there can be as many categories assigned to a single part as you want. So that's really why there has to be two separations between the category of item like battery or belt or blade versus any type of category that we assign to a particular part. So here, let's say that this particular item that we're adding is a battery, so we'll just tell it that this is a battery. We can tell it what the selling department is, and by default this is going to be the parts department. One example would be adding apparel like jackets and boots and those kind of things. We may choose the apparel department as being the selling department. This is only used if you're using departmental accounting, so if you're not, then I wouldn't really worry about it too much. We've got whether the item is active, which is defaulted to being on, obviously, whether we tax by individual quantity, and we won't worry about the link to PO, and the part number. So we're just going to tell it that this is going to be battery 1, and we're going to give it the name of the battery. So we'll say battery XYZ or whatever. And let's just say that we pay $24.95 for this particular part, and the list price on it is $54.37. And at this point, I can choose to go ahead and add inventory into the system. Lizzy will actually do an add adjust for me on the fly, or I can go back and do inventory later. It's really up to you. Once you've added the item into the system, though, you will have to use the add adjust inventory to adjust anything from that point forward. So for right now, let's just say we have 3 of these, and we're going to put them in the miscellaneous test bin as an example. Now, down here we have information for our min-max. If we happen to have more than one location, which we do in the demo database, then it'll actually give me the ability to open up the min-max for all the other locations. So we do have the ability to determine what our min-max is for the different places that we store the part. We can also tell it that we don't want to analyze the min-max values when the system is doing the inventory analysis or the on-the-fly min-max adjustments that it takes into account. We can tell it that we don't want it to look at this particular part by selecting this Don't Analyze button. Now, the options that we have down here are for whether or not this is a sellable item. This generally is going to be a sellable item for most dealerships and those types of companies. If you do testing and things like that, you may have inventory items that aren't actually sellable. Then we've got whether it's an inventory item. By unchecking this, we basically are creating expense items, things that we sell, like for example, if we have a certain thing that we sell to a customer, but we don't actually have inventory for it. Maybe it's a labor, maybe it's a $15 charge to put a belt on a mower or something. I want to sell it, but I don't have inventory that I'm actually keeping track of. A lot of dealers will go in and put 1,000 of them in at a penny, but you just added inventory to your books, and this gives you the ability to sell that item without actually adjusting inventory into the system. Whether or not we do warranty on that particular item, whether we tax that item, whether it's a gift card, whether it's oversized, whether we're going to ignore the markup. Lizzy has a price matrix, and this is basically telling it to ignore the markup. Whether it's a used item, whether we want to skip this item when we're importing price files, whether it's an experimental item, if it's an assembly, F&I, and we're going to get into a lot of this other stuff in other videos. And then if it is associated with an F&I protection package, then you can actually go in and select what package it's associated with. The sales message to prompt the clerk, that is actually a message that we can have show up when they add that part to an invoice to tell them to don't forget to ask for such and such. And then the detailed description, it doesn't actually print in Lizzy, but it prints out when you print the invoice. It'll show them a more detailed description for that particular item. So once we have that information in, we just select the save button, and then Lizzy will go and take care of adding everything into the system for us so that we can start to sell it.